look, I think the last 48 hours have blown a massive, massive black hole in Rachel Reeves' accounts. It's unclear how she's going to find maybe upwards of £10 billion to deal with all of the different problems that she's facing. Let me take you through some of the numbers. Now, back in March, look at this. Rachel Reeves has very tough fiscal rules, very tough borrowing limits, and she also pushes her spending right up to the limit. She's just £9.9 billion away from breaching her fiscal rules. And anything that requires more spending will take chunks out of this, what's known as headroom, the kind of wiggle room that she has. Now, in order to achieve that £9.9 billion of wiggle room back in March, she had to look at the welfare budget, because the welfare budget is ballooning. Look at this. Under the original plans before March, it was going to be £70 billion by 2030 on incapacity and disability benefits. So what Rachel Reeves and Liz Kendall did was initially they said, well, we think that by 2030 we can bring it down to £65 billion a year. Now, over the last 48 hours, the government decided first to compromise some of the way by exempting people currently on personal independent payments. That would have saved, meant a bit smaller savings, something roughly in between. But over the last 24 hours, that has proved unsustainable, as Beth was saying, because of the scale of the revolt of the parliamentary party. And they're going to save, we expect, virtually nothing. And now look at this. So this is where Rachel Reeves has been left. Since March, she's faced a huge number of problems. First of all, some of that headroom, that wiggle room, has been eaten up by the winter fuel allowance U-turn roughly a month ago. Secondly, worse economic conditions, partly because Donald Trump's tariffs, partly because of lower growth in the UK. Well, that's eaten up another £4 billion. But look at this, the biggest chunk that has eaten away at her headroom, £5.5 billion, is the Sky estimate of how much the U-turns over the last 24 hours and 48 hours have cost. That is the scale, we believe, of the welfare-saving black hole. And what does that mean, Sophie? That means right now that Rachel Reeves is on course to breach her fiscal rules. The fiscal rules, the borrowing limit she said was ironclad. By November, she is going to have to find somewhere in the region of £11 billion. £11 billion in order to come back into the black and to restore that £9.9 billion, which we think is the minimum that she would have. So that is a huge sum of money. And the question is, where's it going to come from? She's just agreed loads of spending with her colleagues. So that's going to be quite hard to take it out of welfare, out of Whitehall departments. She has also promised that it's going to be very hard to take it out of the welfare budget, given what's happened today. She has promised not to breach her ironclad fiscal rules. But I want you to look at this. Mel Stride, the Tory Shadow Chancellor, today just double-checked that she still believed in her own fiscal rules. Look at this exchange between him and Rachel Reeves.
Mr. Speaker, the Chancellor has also said that her fiscal rules are ironclad and non-negotiable. So could she reconfirm that commitment now, or are we heading for yet another U-turn?
Well, it would be a bit more, take it a bit more seriously if the party opposite weren't actually voting against the welfare reforms this evening, and if they hadn't committed to fully reverse the winter fuel changes, which is going to cost a further £400 million that they can't explain.
Well, you heard there, or rather you didn't hear, Rachel Reeves recommit to her fiscal rules. It seems inconceivable to me that she would junk them, because the markets would start to question just how sustainable Britain's massive debt pile, more than 100% of debt to GDP, would be if she did that. But really, Sophie, where is she going to get towards £11 billion? And that's before she has to scrap the digital services tax under the instructions of Donald Trump, or potentially find other money for other climb downs like the two-tiled welfare cap, which is also in the crosshairs of many Labour MPs. It's an impossible situation, some that many think Rachel Reeves devised herself and is of her own making. Very, very hard indeed.